Okay, no, so it started now. Okay, it started by the way.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well done. Yes, you look great. You look like the girl from The Ring. She went to the TV. She was walking. That movie was scary. Really. All right. So this chapter deals with crime scene investigation. So CSI. When you hear about CSI on TV, that's the meaning of CSI is crime scene investigation. So we're really getting into the fun part of this course because now we're going to start looking at how we analyze crime scene. You know who comes first. You know how do you collect evidence and how do you preserve it. So all that part we're going to. So those are the objective, right? Those are the vocabulary words we're going to use in this chapter. So one of the most important thing about evidence in a crime scene is a principle of exchange. It's also called Locar's principle of exchange. All right. Um, well, I use my native pronunciation for that, but you're probably going to say Locard, principle of exchange. All right. What is that? Are you making fun of me? Are you? My daughter's making fun of me. So, yeah, there she is making fun of me. And now she's hiding. She fell on the floor. All right. This kid's a weirdo. All right. So, Locar's principle of exchange. It's contact between two individual or contact between an individual and an object. So, what happens most of the time on a crime is that there's going to be transfer of material mostly between two persons, from perpetrator to victim. What might happen also is exchange of material between the perpetrator and an object. Let's say use an object to hit the victim, then there can be exchange of material there, or victim to object. For example, if someone gets like hit by someone hits someone with a hammer, then you get the principle of exchange from the perp to the hammer to the head. If someone falls on the floor, so there's a lot of different, or if it can also be from what?
a car.
Well, yeah, yeah, a car to a person.
Yeah.
Actually, yes. Sometimes you will find very astute here, daughter. Very astute, very
Yeah.
astute. Yes,
Mhm.
look at it. So beautiful. All right.
Oh.
I'm so smart. Um, as Emily was saying, is sometimes you see chips of painting from a car on another car. So that's definitely principle, Locard's principle of exchange. All right. So let's go to the next one here. So type of evidence. We will take a look, um, more detailed look in the next chapter, chapter 2 OG, which is on evidence itself. But we can start talking about two main type of evidence, right? You have direct evidence, which are the straight. Oh my God. Usually, this is why I wait until 11 to do those lectures, because those kids refuse to go to bed and making noise. Ah, ah. All right, can I do this? Yes, let's continue. Two type of evidence: direct evidence, which is just straight up information that will prove or disprove something, and then you have circumstantial evidence that is not direct, can only use to imply but not to prove or disprove. Okay, so direct evidence, circumstantial. Circumstantial, those can be divided into physical evidence and also biological evidence, but more. Now, you have also class evidence and individual evidence. I don't want to talk too much about that right now, but class evidence can narrow to a group of person. So it's only used to narrow a population. For example, blue eyes. If someone has blue eyes, then let's say the perp had blue eyes, so it reduces. You're removing all the other colors, and now you can focus on people with blue eyes. Let's say someone add blood type AB, right? You won't be able to identify one person with a type AB, but you'll be able to narrow your group of people. Individual evidence, however, narrow to a single person. For example, well, I think the best example is DNA, right? If you can get enough DNA and analyze the DNA, yes, you can nail it to one person. And fingerprints also is also the individual evidence because we all have a unique set of fingerprints. So, CSI team, this is not what you see on TV. You have the police officers, investigators, medical examiners who are actually never on the crime scene. When you look at shows and then you say, oh, you have examiners coming to the crime scene, that doesn't happen. Okay, medical examiners will do the analysis in a lab. You'll see detectives, of course. Usually those are the ones who will investigate the crime scene. And then your specialists. Okay, so investigation, there are 7 S. So let's go quickly through that. Securing the scene. Okay, so when you see those yellow tapes, this is what it's used for. It's to secure the scene, make sure that no other people than the person who are supposed to be there on the crime scene. You separate the witnesses from, if they are, from the crime scene, and then you scan the scene. So there's different ways to do that. Usually now, I mean, they used to take pictures. Now they actually video tape the scene by scanning. You look at the scene. There's different ways of doing that. Sketching is also very important. They still sketch even if they take picture. Okay, to give you a view from top, so that you can kind of have an aerial determination of when, where, and maybe try to imagine what happened. We'll try to do that. I think we'll try to sketch Coach's office as an exercise. That's an old classic that I would like to do. And then you search for evidence. There's different ways to do that also. And then when you find evidence, you secure and collect and keep the chain of custody. We spoke about that a bit in the previous chapter. So this image is interesting because this is, this is using technology to scan a crime scene. So this is the boat that the Boston Marathon bomber was hiding. For those who remember that story, when the bomber used a pressure cooker, and put projectiles in it, and then it exploded, and then killed and maimed a lot of people. So that bomber hid in a boat for a long time. So they used thermal technology. What? So funny. This is my job. This is what I do.
You keep saying,
Yeah, well, yeah, I keep saying this is the way I am, because I used to come on, use the big helper.
Oh, you stuttering?
Yeah, I used to stutter a lot. So I replaced the to that was a, I see, those are trauma and secrets that I reveal to you guys because my daughter is trolling me on the side. All right. So yes, this is a technology that was used. They use thermal technology so that the heat coming out from the body of the bomber, you see in the middle here, that the light, kind of light, but it's, which is pretty cool. That's how they found him. All right, so packing evidence. So there are different ways of packing evidence. Also, the type of evidence will also determine if they use plastic, if they use paper to package it. All right, but mainly you place the evidence in the middle, you cover it, and then you secure it in a plastic bag using a stick-on label, and then the collector writes his name, give it to whoever needs to give, that person sign. So we've talked about the chain of custody, and the chain of custody is used that if someone tampers with the evidence, then we know the history of who was in possession of the evidence. All right, chain of custody. As you can see here, here is Tom Jones first, and then after that, the examiner, Preston, I cannot read well. writes his name. That's very, very important chain of custody. All right, so searching patterns, there's different ways to look at a crime scene. It depends on the size. It depends on if it's outside or if it's inside. So the most used is the grid. You separate the crime scene in small squares, and then you assign people to that particular square. So that's probably spiral is used when it's out. Mostly it's used outside when the crime scene is quite large. I believe the biggest crime scene in America. I'll put this as a trivia. What was the biggest crime scene in the 20th in the 21st century? Yeah, biggest crime scene. Think about it. Are you Googling it?
Yes.
She's Googling it on the side. Okay. All right. So, this shows data points and sub data points is the point that you're going to use to create the grids. Okay. So once you find an evidence, you will mark it in your sketch. Okay. All right. Measuring the position of evidence. So those are all specialists who does that. They do that. They're called specialists. They're not police officers. I mean, they kind of are, but they're not detective. They usually don't carry firearms. So when you look at CSI and you look someone analyzing blood, and all of a sudden, oh, who's this? And then that's not true. It doesn't happen in real life. So another example. Oh, crap! A specialist. Okay. So as you see, so this is one. This is one of the quadrants of the grid, right? And then if they find an evidence inside it, so they will mark it and they will measure the distance so it can relate to the grid. Okay. So forensic, so once you find the evidence, still go through the chain of custody and it arrives to the labs. This is when this is where the labs this is how it looks. It looks like a pretty normal lab. It's nothing like with 3D hologram images that you see on shows. They're technicians and they're specialized to process only one type of evidence. So for example, if it's blood, there's a specialist in blood who will process all type of blood evidence. They're not versatile, just like in the shows. Let's say someone can do oh, let me do DNA, and then after that, let's go the fingerprints. It should be different. Not only is different people, it's going to be different labs. All right, so it's a long process usually when you analyze evidence, because you have specialists for every type of evidence, for DNA, for blood, for fingerprints, you know, and such and such. Okay. Once you analyze evidence, then you can pretty much tell the story of what happened. So now you start reconstructing what happened. So this is when the scientific method comes into play, right? Because based on that, but it's a bit different, because usually in the scientific method, you know, you get the information and then you form an hypothesis. Here in forensic science, you analyze a lot before you form your hypothesis, right? So you get all the analysis, all the evidence, you collect. So it's pretty much reverse. You collect the data, which are the evidence on the crime scene, then you analyze it, and then based on that, you can form your hypothesis of what happened. So it's a bit of a messed up reverse from the middle type of scientific method, but scientific method nonetheless, because it's science. So this is what crime scene reconstruction is. It's forming an hypothesis. So thinking about the sequence of events. There's a show was pretty good with that. Was a Dexter. When you would recreate based on blood spatter in the blood, you would create what happened. Not telling people that usually the one who stabbed was himself, but it's a good show. So crime scene reconstruction equals scientific method. All right. So they're gonna stage crime scene and reconstruct crimes and reconstruct events, usually for arson, for murder. When someone kills someone and make it look like as a suicide, it happens more often than you think. It's not only in books and shows, and also burglary.
Yeah, I saw a case on that.
So a case on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, which one?
Some guy, they found his like all his organs gone. He was scalped, and he had no brain. And then they also sawed off his jaw, but they claimed it a homicide because they couldn't find out who it was.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So also of course everyone is obsessed with Jeffrey Dahmer lately.
Dahmer.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't know.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer. So I don't know. Anyway, so there's a lot of fascination with the thing, which I'm not a fan of because it's the families are still most of the families of the victim are pretty much alive, and it's a lot of trauma that have been that have resurfaced, especially that Jeffrey preyed on black and brown queer community, and I really don't like the how do you say this? I mean, they're turning this into some kind of fetish. Fetish, yeah, and yeah, but in French is fetish.
Oh.
Yeah. I have an accent, kid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all right. So turning this into some kind of fetish is not good, especially when I feel it kind of devalue the black and brown queer community. So it's probably the second most shown, most viewed show on Netflix history, and I'm proud to say that did not contribute to that. But that said, talking about him, eventually he got he got 69 sentence, but he got his head bashed in by a murderer in prison. And that man killed not only him but someone else who killed his wife and tried to make it passed it as two African American men killed his wife. So they used stage crime scene to figure it out. All right. So fun fact. So I went pretty far here just to explain, to give you one example of stage crime, but this was one of them. Okay. All right. And all right. So I think we've covered pretty much everything here. We spoke about the Locker's principle of exchange, the type of evidence, crime scenes, how do you process a crime scene, and how do you analyze and how reconstruction of a crime is kind of a weird version of the scientific method. So this is about this is about all. So what will be important is for you to do the chapter review, read your chapter. Then what we'll do in class, which will be quite interesting, is we will is it Wired or BuzzFeed who looks at crime scene analysis in movies, and they ask an expert to see how realistic it is. So that's probably one of the first things we'll do in class, which is always quite fun. And then you'll have to write a little discussion about it. All right, so that is it. And then the main activity will probably be drawing Coach's office. You're gonna sketch it because there's always a lot of stuff in his office, so you'll, yeah, should be fun. All right, we're good. Say goodbye.
Yeah, adios.
Adios. Where's the stop recording?